Hey guys, welcome to our first vlog ever. I am so excited for you guys to see it. But before I get into it, literally the craziest thing happened and my shoulder is killing me. So I don't know if you guys know, but the shoulder has this thing called the rotator cuff. And basically there are four muscles: the subscapularis, supraspinatus, infraspinatus, and teres minor. And basically the four make up this rotator cuff, which gives stability to the glenohumeral joint, aka your shoulder joint. And the mobility of the joint comes at the cost of stability. So mobility is more important than stability, making that the reason for rotator cuff to be the weakest point of your shoulder. Hence why it's hurting me right now. What I think I have now, sadly, is a rotator cuff tear. And I know it might seem that it's not that crazy, but basically an anterior rotator cuff tear is actually one of the most common injuries, as it can affect anybody regardless of your age. You can be 14, you can be 25, you can be 80. It can affect all ages, and regardless of your activity level, your sports, whatever you do, it can happen to you. So be careful, just saying. Because of that, the tendons do experience a lot of stress no matter what you do, whether it's a sport, activities of daily living, whatever it may be. Usually, your shoulder has a lot of movement and that rotator cuff is doing all of that for you. So the tendons get worn out, they get put under a lot of stress, hence the injuries. So just saying, rotator cuff tears are not fun. Honestly, I think I'm experiencing one right now. I don't know what it is that I did, but that's what it is. And well, let's see what I can do. Stay tuned, enjoy the vlog.
So a rotator cuff helps you do almost any activity that involves moving your arm or your shoulder. In terms of activities of daily living, your rotator cuff helps you do things like opening up a door, lifting, carrying, getting dressed, cooking, and even driving. The top three sports that see an increase in a rotator cuff are baseball, swimming, and racket sports like tennis or badminton. When a person gets a rotator cuff tear, simple activities or sports become very difficult to do because of the lack of range of motion the person has. As we see here, our friend Daniel overused his shoulder muscles and tendons, which caused this tear and is the reason we see him in pain.
Good afternoon. Today we will be talking about the prevalence of rotator cuff tears in our population. Adults of 60 years of age are found to have rotator cuff tears. This is a very specific tear that is very found within this population. A lot of the cases are asymptomatic, meaning they show no signs. The increase of RCT, rotator cuff tears, increase each decade, meaning that there could be a 50% of increase of rotator cuff tears of patients above 80. Poor posture is a common predictor, suggesting diagnosis of kyphotic lordotic back, flat backs, and sway backs are indicators that may lead to rotator cuff tears. The total prevalence of partial or full thickness of rotator cuff tears range between the population from 23 to 45% according to CON 2023. This meaning that a lot of the cases are found within the population of the older age. However, statistically speaking, there are cases in which adults of 20 years and younger could have rotator cuff tears. Approximately also a 30% of these adults range from 20 to all the way to 59 are 30% of the population with rotator cuff tears. 62% of these adults that later go on to the age of 80 and above make that 62% tile. After the age of 66, bilateral injuries lead to tears interlinked with age, not by the size of the tear, but by age. Thank you. This is Bryan. Have a good afternoon.
History of the rotator cuff tear. Before the 1950s, rotator cuff tears were not well understood. People were usually told to rest with no real rehab plan. And by the 1970s, open surgery became common. After surgery, patients were kept in a sling and very little strength training. In the 1980s through the 1990s, PTs focused on posture, stretching the shoulder muscles. And in the 2000s, with arthroscopy surgery, PT started early rehab, included passive motion, assistive movement, as well as strengthening, and the goal was to return to a daily life. But in the 2010s until today, researchers have shown how home-based rehab can work for patients just as well as supervised PT. And a 2025 study that I read by Ardobo and his colleagues found similar results from massive cuff repairs. Now telehealth and a health program are often used, and modern day today rehab is personalized. It includes pain control, mobility, strengthening, and helping patients get back to what they love to do.
Interventions for a torn rotator cuff don't only include PT and PTA interventions, but they also include surgical interventions, and possibly others depending on the severity of the tear. Our job as PTAs is to help patients return to their prior level of function by focusing on range of motion and strengthening exercises. Most rotator cuff repairs will be in a sling and will be limited to passive range of motion exercises until the tendon has healed properly to begin strengthening exercises. Active assist range of motion would be the progression once the tendon has healed properly and the patient can now begin resistance training. Important note to keep in mind is that even though the injury may be healed properly, the patient makes a full recovery, the tendon in the shoulder will never be 100%. The duration of care will also vary depending on several factors, such as age, severity of the tear, and environmental factors such as funds that can hinder the accessibility to PT.
How reliable are rotator cuff repairs for torn rotator cuffs? Well, according to a study published by the National Library of Medicine, long-term structural and functional outcomes of rotator cuff repairs have not been studied or developed. However, there are control groups and current studies that are going on currently. For example, there is a study that holds a control group of about 25 patients. One cohort of the control group ranges from 14 to 30-year-olds. The second control group is an old cohort of 45 and older group. Both cohorts sustain improvement in functionality and short-term follow-ups. However, there were a significant amount of individuals in both cohorts who sustained structural damage but may be experiencing delay in on-site rotator cuff tear symptoms. Follow-ups were only done within the year of surgery and only followed up with discharged patients of physical therapy. This just goes to show you that rotator cuff tears is a continuing evolution in the physical therapy world. There are also outside contextual factors such as personal and environmental factors that affect one's ability to fully recover and understand the gravity of their situation, such as age, habits, lifestyle, and social background, the physical, social, attitudinal environment in which people live in and conduct life. Again, rotator cuff tears aren't solely a specific population of individuals, but it is an element that is continuing its development in the physical therapy realm, and people are continuously finding different interventions to better find outcomes, better recover individuals, and find ways of full recovery.